Welcome back, Irish fans, to Breaking Down Braves Boys podcast. Today I'm with Adam Jardy from the Colombus Dispatch talking about OSU versus Notre Dame tomorrow. It'll be out today, I guess, is when you'll see it. But thank you, Mr. Jardy, for coming on. And let's get to the game.
Sure. Thanks for having me.
So to start, I guess we'll just ask you, can you give me an overview on all five starters for OSU and kind of what they bring to the table?
Sure. The starting point guard, C.J. Walker, he's a fifth-year college player. He transferred in from Florida State. Actually spent most of his years growing up in Indianapolis. But he's a real solid, gritty, experienced player. Chris Holtmann has said often that this team will go as far as C.J. Walker will take them. He's a critical part of their offense and their defense, even though he's not really a scorer. He does score. He gets guys in position. He really just runs the engine at both ends. The two guards, Dwayne Washington Jr. He's a junior. He's a guy that likes to shoot. Is one of the highest offensive usage rates in college basketball. They're still working on him as far as being more efficient and maybe better understanding of good shot versus bad shot. But he likes his offense. He's gotten better defensively, and he started to do more on the ball. They don't have a lot of guards on this roster, so he can handle the one, but more of a two guard. And then this year they've got Justice Suing, who's a transfer from Cal, who sat out last season, but he's a fourth-year junior. He's their best scorer. I believe he's leading them in scoring right now. Very talented player, really good at getting to the rim, drawing contact, getting to the line. He's definitely, like I said, he's their best player. He's odds-on favorite maybe to be the leading scorer, him or Dwayne Washington. And then you've got E.J. Liddell at the 4. He's a sophomore, two-time Mr. Basketball in Illinois, which puts him in very rare air. I think he's only the second player to ever do that. He's more of a low-post threat, but they've asked him to sort of expand his game. Got a nice sort of mid-range jumper, has taken some threes. He's not super proficient at that yet, but really kind of growing into a more pronounced role as a sophomore, playing with a lot more power than he did as a freshman and kind of stepping into a bigger role. He was a backup primarily last year for Caleb Weston and Kyle Young, but now he's playing starters minutes. And then Kyle Young is essentially the 5. This isn't really a team that has a true center necessarily in the roster, but I guess you would classify Kyle as the 5. He's just sort of an all-around, energetic, gritty type of player. He's had some injuries the last 2 years that have really limited his playing time, but gets a lot of offensive rebounds, very active on the glass, a lot of fun to watch. He's the kind of guy that, if he's on your team, you really like him, and if he's not on your team, he kind of gets on your nerves because he just makes a lot of things happen with hustle and energy. But he's, for all intents and purposes, he's the 5 on this roster.
Gotcha. So this seems like I've watched a little bit on them. Seems like a pretty physical team with a lot of well-built guys, kind of the opposite of Notre Dame. But is there anything schematically unique they do? Is it a slow-paced offense, fast-paced, certain defense they run?
They play man-to-man. That's been sort of a staple under Chris Holtmann. He's not a big fan of zone. And it's a big question mark about this year's team because last year they were among the best in the nation defensively. They always have been under Chris Holtmann. They're generally a top 20 defense every year. And this year, they're replacing their top on-ball defender in Luther Muhammad, who transferred to Arizona State, their top wing defender in Andre Wesson, who was a senior, and then Caleb Wesson was actually one of the better rim protectors in college basketball. Ohio State's defensive two-point field goal percentage last year was really good. And this year, they have to figure out a lot as far as some of those new roles. So defensively, they play hard, and they try to be physical and use their size. They don't have guys. They basically start the 3, 4, 5 guys are all between 6'5" and 6'7" or 6'8". They don't really have a Caleb Weston, I think, was listed at 6'9". Normally you think of having a big guy that's 6'10", somewhere around there, but they don't have height necessarily, but they do have a lot of dudes who are pretty strong and like to play physical. You kind of have to be that way in the Big Ten. Offensively, they're still trying to figure some things out because you had a guy in Caleb Weston who was your go-to player on offense for the last 2 years. And now you have guys stepping into new roles. And I wouldn't say the offense looks drastically different yet, but they're still you've got guys stepping into different things. They've asked some guys to expand their games, and I think they're still very much a work in progress, especially at the offensive end right now.
Well, that's good to hear because Notre Dame's played some really, really good defensive teams to start out with Michigan State and then Detroit Mercy, who is sneaky good defensively. So good to hear they're kind of a work in progress on both ends. So I guess that kind of segues into what do you think their biggest strength is and their biggest weakness going into this game?
Let's see, I would say biggest weakness is, like I said, still trying to figure out pieces. I think this is a team that has a lot of really interesting players, and it does have a really talented core group of guys who are back. But you have a lot of guys who are new to each other. So I think that's probably the biggest weakness right now, is just kind of figuring out some of those things. They haven't shot the ball well from three. That's been an issue for them. They were their second game this season, they were 4 of 18, and then in their most recent game last Wednesday, they ended up, I believe it was, they got off to I don't remember the numbers off the top of my head, but it was a really poor start, and then they made like 5 of their last 6 to I think finish 10 of 26. So until that point, they were like 5 of 20. So they had a really bad sort of 3.5 halves of shooting. So that's not proven to be a strength for them yet. They're really talented at getting to the line. They're among the nation's best at drawing fouls and getting to the free throw line. They're shooting a lot of free throws. So they're very good at that. And defensively, they have made some things really tough for their opponents, but it's hard really right now to have a good gauge in this Ohio State team because they've played 3 teams and they're all low major teams. I mean, they've played Illinois State, UMass Lowell, and Morehead State. So I think it's hard to draw some very big sweeping conclusions about this team so far because they just haven't. This will be a real good test for them.
Mm-hmm. For sure, it sounds like it'll be a big test for sure, and a great opportunity for Notre Dame to kind of get out on a team who hasn't really played any competition yet. But I also wanted to ask you, this wasn't really what I had at the beginning, but I thought of it. How big is OSU's rotation? I'm sure Notre Dame fans want to hear this after what we saw last night.
I would say that right now, in a tight game, now that they were pushed in their second game this season against UMass Lowell, they were trailing in the second half and needed a comeback, and they ended up winning by 10, but it wasn't a double-digit game until the last minute. And in that second half, it was a 7-man rotation with the only 2 guys off the bench were Jimmy Sotos, who's a guard, who's a transfer from Bucknell. He played a little bit, and freshman Zed Key, who's a backup center. Those were their only 2 reserves in the second half. What will be interesting is I think this game will mark the debut for Seth Townes, and he's an incredibly talented player. He's a Columbus native. He went to Harvard, was the Ivy League Player of the Year as a sophomore, but hasn't played the last 2 seasons with knee injuries. And it sounds like, he's going to be a game-time decision. I think he would have played had they hosted Alabama A&M on Saturday. That game was canceled after a positive COVID test in their program. But I think Seth Townes is likely to play in this game, and so that expands the rotation a little bit. But I would say that in ideal circumstances, the rotation with Seth Townes probably goes 9 deep.
Wow, it's good to hear they went 7, but I don't know if you know this, but against Detroit Mercy last night, Notre Dame was 6 deep. So it's obviously not ideal to face a team with a big rotation, but
yeah, well, if you have 6 guys who are really talented, there's an Ohio State team, been about 10 years now under Thad Matta, where basically 4 of the 5 starters played 38 to 39 minutes a game. And if you've got that kind of talent, and if you can avoid foul trouble, which I know Notre Dame's been very good at, that certainly is important. And it can work. You got to avoid foul trouble.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think you're giving us a little too much credit there. I don't necessarily think it's because of who we have. It's just kind of an issue of we don't really have anything. We had 8 players, so we're not great with depth right now. So OSU could definitely take advantage of that. But which player on OSU do you think Notre Dame fans should be worried about heading into this game?
I would be worried about Dwayne Washington. He's a guy that seems to live in these big moments or in these big games. When I think back to, as a freshman he played, he wasn't necessarily a featured part of the offense, but especially last season when he kind of forced his way into the equation a little bit more as a sophomore. Early in the season, he had big games. They blew out Villanova early last season, and he was instrumental in that. They went to North Carolina and dominated the Tar Heels. We know that the Tar Heels weren't that good last season, but they still went there and won. He was huge in that game. I think he likes these kinds of stages, and I think that the chance to play against a high major team for the first time, I'm interested to see how he handles that. So I'd expect you're going to see a lot of Dwayne Washington, which could be good or could be bad. Depends on if his shots are going in and if he's forcing too many things. But he'd be one guy, and Justice Suing, because like I said, he's really proven himself to be a really talented scorer. He's a lot of fun to watch. Good at driving the lane. I'll be interested to see against a Notre Dame team that doesn't go very deep. Can he get some guys into foul trouble? Can Ohio State force Notre Dame to foul them? Because I think that could be a real important part of this game.
Gotcha. Definitely going to look out for them. But I know you can't really get a great grip on them because they haven't played too many great teams yet. But do you think OSU's national ranking is fair or too high or low for now?
I think it's probably fair right now because you have to assume that Chris Holtman's track record is he's going to get the best out of his guys. He's going to get the most out of them. And whether this team ends up being an upper echelon Big Ten team or not, I think they will play hard defensively, and that will give them a lot of opportunities to win games. I do think, and sorry, ACC fans, I love ACC basketball, and I grew up watching ACC basketball as much as I watched the Big Ten, but I do think the Big Ten is the best conference this season, and I think that will put that ranking to the test. I don't know if they'll stay ranked all season, but I think it's fair right now, just because I mean they're 3-0 and they've got a lot of talented pieces, and you've got to think that their best basketball is ahead of them.
Mm-hmm. For sure, definitely not a great year for Notre Dame to schedule 3 Big Ten teams. Like you said, I think they might be the best conference right now, but I agree with that to an extent. But what's your biggest concern heading into this game? You seem decently confident in OSU.
I mean, I don't know if I would say confident. I don't know how they're going to react going on the road. I don't know what it looks like if you put Seth Townes in the rotation. How does that impact things? Who loses minutes because of that? What does Seth look like? I mean, if he plays, it will be his first game in more than 1,000 days. So what kind of rust is he shaking off, and how does that impact you playing against a higher level opponent? I mean, Ohio State, like I said, was pushed basically to the wire by UMass Lowell team that's in the 200 somewhere in the KenPom.com national rankings. Notre Dame's going to be a significant step up from that. And I think that when you are playing a team that is really good, at least at this point, at not fouling, that's been a real strength for Ohio State, is getting to the line. So if they don't get to the line, and if shots don't fall, it could be a tough go for them. I don't think we know enough about this Ohio State team to accurately, I think any Ohio State fan that tells you they know exactly what they're going to get on Tuesday night, or that they think that Ohio State's definitely going to win, I would not go that far. I mean, I expect them to be competitive, and I expect it to be a good game, but I don't know beyond that just yet, and I'm still making up my mind on this team.
Gotcha. I think that's definitely fair for now. But this one isn't necessarily like a matchup or thing about the game in general, but I know Dane Goodwin has a big background with Ohio State, originally committed there, and I saw he follows you on Twitter, so I think you'd be qualified to talk about him. What was kind of his reputation around Ohio, and what do you really remember about him as a commit?
Well, I actually saw Dane Goodwin as a junior play against Caleb Wesson as a senior in one of the most high-level high school basketball games I've ever seen. And Upper Arlington pulled off the upset of Westerville South. It was a big, big win, and Dane was spectacular. And you watched that game. At the time, they were both committed to Ohio State. You watched that game, and Ohio State was going through a really rough stretch. It ended up being Thad Matta's last season. But you could look at that and project why things were headed in a positive direction. Why, I thought that Thad Matta would get the chance to turn things around, because Dane looked every bit like a really, really talented future college player, and Caleb the same way. So there was a lot of expectations and a lot of hopes for him, and he was committed to Ohio State for a long time. But then ultimately, when Thad was fired, he decides to reopen his recruitment, and he considered Ohio State, but he really liked what sort of what sort of fit he found at Notre Dame. So I actually spoke with Dane on Friday night for a story that'll be running. It should be on BuckeyeExtra.com on Tuesday afternoon, but just about the transition in the process and why he's fitted so well at Notre Dame. And he loves it there. And he said, he still has relationships with some of the players on Ohio State's roster and the coaching staff that recruited him, but he obviously feels good about his situation and what he's been able to do at Notre Dame. And I'm very excited to get to see him in person because I really liked his game in high school and was really excited to watch him at Ohio State. So I think Notre Dame got a really good one there.
Yeah, for sure. It's good to get some insight from a non-Notre Dame person about him too, but we're definitely glad that they fired their coach so we could land him. But yeah, that's kind of all we got for him. I don't know if I really buy the revenge game thing for either side. I don't know about you, but I don't think there's really bad blood.
No, I don't. I wouldn't say there's bad blood there. It's not like Chris Holtmann was the coach that he committed to and then decided that to back out or anything like that. And Dane actually he said that he was looking forward to the opportunity maybe to get to play Ohio State someday, and he said he would have liked if it would have been like his senior year. They would have drawn each other, and he would have got to play in Columbus like as a senior. He thought that would have been cool, but he liked the opportunity to go somewhere else and to kind of build his name and to get an opportunity at a different school. I mean, Ohio State is basically in his backyard. I mean, Upper Arlington is very close to campus, and there's something to be said for playing right in your backyard and for having that opportunity. There's something to be said for wanting to go away and make your name somewhere else. I mean, lots of people choose either of those options, and Dane's obviously found a good fit.
For sure. What do you think Ohio State has to do to beat Notre Dame tomorrow night?
I think they have to get to the line. I think they have to hit some shots because it would be really beneficial for them to see some threes go in. I think they're a better shooting three-point team than what we've seen this season. I don't know that they're as elite as they were last year. I mean, they did lose their two best three-point shooters in the Wesson brothers, so there's some there. You got to make that up somewhere, and they've struggled with that a little bit. But I think you got to make shots. I think you got to get to the line, and I think they've got to be connected defensively because this team is still kind of, like I said, figuring out some roles at that end of the court. And I think that if they're connected and if they're able to handle being on the road together for the first time, I think that would obviously go a long way. I don't know how much the whole being on the road will really matter. I mean, I understand that parents of the players are allowed to watch the games, but Ohio State hasn't played in front of fans yet, any fans. That's been until at least the end of December. Ohio State has made a decision they can't have any fans at any of the games. So not that it's going to be a true hostile environment, but it's at least a different gym, different place. I'm curious. They got to handle all that and just kind of being away from home for the first time.
Mm-hmm. It's a really interesting perspective. I don't think we would have heard that any other year, really. But
yeah, it's just such a weird year in college basketball. I mean, watching Notre Dame play at Michigan State was a surreal experience because I've covered a number of games at the Breslin Center. It's one of my favorite places to see a game, and it's loud and it's packed, and people are. I mean, when you go to the Breslin Center, the fans are right on you. You can barely walk around the court because it's just everything is so compact. And to see it on TV where there's nobody there and there's all this space, it felt very jarring to me. And so I'm interested to see what it's going to be like to be at an away game for the first time this year. I've been covering a game with a few fans as opposed to no fans. It's a surreal year for college basketball.
Mm-hmm. For sure. I don't think it'll be too much different in Joyce Center because we don't draw a whole lot of fans anyway a lot of the time. But it'll be good for you to be there for sure.
I'm excited to check a new arena off the list. I love getting to see different places in college basketball. It's one of my favorite parts of the job. I love getting to see new arenas.
For sure. I'm pretty jealous of you about that one, going to see Notre Dame play. But before we let you go, I just want to get your prediction for the game. Maybe just give me a score range. I know it's hard to give 80 to 70 or whatever, but
I would say it'll be somewhere low 70s to upper 60s. And I'm not sure who's going to win, but I think it'll be probably close. I say somewhere between like a 6 to 8, maybe 4 to 8 point final margin.
For sure. I think that would be a really good game after Notre Dame's kind of had two tough ones. Well, not tough ones, but two kind of easily decided games. So looking forward to that.
And a lot of games canceled. I mean, they've had a tough go in the early part of the schedule. I mean, just trying to get games in. I think that's such an interesting wrinkle to the college basketball season. Just trying to stay resilient and being able to handle when a game gets canceled. Can you be ready for the next one? And that's Ohio State's in that boat right now too. They're supposed to play on Saturday. That game gets canceled. Can they use that? Can they respond from that? I'm interested. There's a lot that's going into this game. I'm excited to see how it plays out.
Definitely. So if that's all you got, I think I can just let you go. Hopefully we can see a close game tomorrow like we both think. But that's kind of all I have. If you have anything else, tell Notre Dame fans.
I'm just happy there's college basketball. Every time there's a game, I think we need to thank the basketball gods for it. We need to embrace it and just get through the season, and hopefully we're back to normal soon. But just enjoy the fact we've got college basketball.
All right, so now that we've heard from Adam Jardy about Ohio State and what they can bring to the table and challenge Notre Dame with, I brought Jake on to kind of help me recap Detroit Mercy, and we're also going to go over our keys to the game, prediction, matchup to watch, stuff that we do every episode. So welcome on, Jake, and I guess we'll ask you first. What are your thoughts on the Detroit Mercy game initially?
A win's a win. They won by what, 9-11 or something like 9 to like 10, 11 points like that. I mean, I think that's a fair amount for what I think can be a tournament team for sure out of the Horizon League. I wish it would have been a little bit more dominant at times, but I also did see a lot of what I'm looking for this season. So you can't really complain. It was a good win. It wasn't perfect by any means, like last year's win against them, but Hub got some points on. I mean, Leszewski is continuing to really impress this season. Goodwin did well. He's getting some boards this season. I mean, who would have thought he'd get 9 boards a game at this point? I mean, I think Leszewski is really looking like our best player of the season. I know I mentioned him as one of the 3 candidates, but I really thought he was like the least likely of the 3 to be our best player. But he looks really good. What I need them to work on, I probably need to be a little bit better defensively. They had no bench production. I mean, Tony Sanders looked kind of good, but he played 15 minutes. Zona barely played. I mean, if they have no depth in the front court, that's going to be a problem. So I don't know where they go from that, but overall, I'm pleased with the win.
Agreed. I'm really happy with what I saw. I didn't get to watch the first couple minutes. I heard Zona did not look great, but I was only able to watch the condensed game, so I didn't really see ins and outs of what he was doing, but the bench has got to be better. I think we're on the way to the bench coming back, though, with Jogo. He'll be back maybe Saturday. Carmody's going to be potentially back later this month. Hopefully Wirtz can come back late December, early January, whatever. But that could be a strength at some point. Really happy with what I saw with Leszewski also. And I thought this was a really well-coached game by Bray, dropping into that zone, the 1-3-1 to screw with Davis, the 2-3. It just seemed like it really got him out of his rhythm. Obviously, that a lot of it was on him not having a big night. But I think with the defenders we have on this team, we did a really good job on him specifically, even if we didn't do a great job defending as a team. But, that's kind of what I have for that. I mean, we can't sustain with Prentice Hub and Cormac Ryan playing 40 minutes a game. What did Cormac play? Like 38, Hub played 40. So I don't think you can really have that.
Yeah.
But I liked what I saw from the big guys, really exploited that height advantage down low and athleticism advantage, frankly. But really liked what I saw there. Any other thoughts on Detroit Mercy before we get into Ohio State?
Yeah, I think that sums it up well.
Gotcha. So I guess we'll go into Ohio State now. We just talked to Adam Jardy about the game. So Jake and I will give our kind of rundown on it. So for the keys to the game, my first one is run the zone effectively. Bray kind of touched on last night that he really was leaning on the zone with such a short bench to kind of preserve the guys' legs. So I think that's going to be huge. And against an Ohio State team that loves to get to the basket and draw fouls, I think running a zone is going to make that a lot harder on them. and Ohio State's not that great of a three-point shooting team. I was looking at their percentages from three, and 50, 36, 16, 0, 25, 0, 12, 0, 0, 0. So it doesn't seem like a great team early on from three. Seemed like they really struggled from deep, and as a team, they're shooting a little over 30%. So I think you really want to force them to take bad shots beyond the arc instead of letting them get to the basket and do what they're really good at. So, Jake, would you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a pretty good angle to look at it from for this game.
Gotcha. And then my second one, Adam Jardy was touching on that Ohio State loves to go to the basket and draw fouls, and that could be really, really awful for Notre Dame down the stretch with a six-man rotation. If Durham and Leschewski get in foul trouble, what did Durham have 4 at one point last night late in the game, and Leschewski had 2 in like the first 5 minutes. So
yeah, he did. That was bad.
Yeah, you cannot have that happen this time, unless you want Zona playing extended minutes, which is possible. Maybe Detroit Mercy was just a bad matchup for him or whatever. Maybe they were trying to switch him on to guards, which he doesn't do very well. But I think you got to keep the big man on the floor, stay out of foul trouble, and hopefully, well, not hopefully keep it to a six-man rotation, but don't force Bray to go 7-8 deep tomorrow night. So that's what I got for the second key. And then the third one, rebound. Ohio State's a really physical team down low, and against a physical team down low like MSU, Notre Dame got bodied on the boards. I think they got out-rebounded by like 12, so that's really awful. Cannot have that happen against Ohio State. But that's what I have for the keys. Jake, do you have anything else or anything to add on to either of those?
I mean, if I know they have, Seth Townes, maybe coming back. I mean, he's probably got to be their best player if he plays. It's definitely. I mean, it's a ranked team. It's a tough matchup for sure. But I do also think it's absolutely a winnable one. I mean, they've played these teams before. I mean, they haven't really been tested this season. We're their first test for sure. I'm not saying we're better, but Illinois State, UMass Lowell, Morehead State, I mean, those aren't really, So maybe we can, since we played Michigan State, we kind of know how to go better into this. But, I mean, we'll see.
Mm-hmm.
I'm hopeful. I'm looking forward to the game.
Yeah, for sure. The UMass Lowell definitely gave him a fight too, so that's encouraging. But my matchup to watch is going to be Leschewski and Durham versus Liddell and Kyle Young. Notre Dame, once again, has a big height advantage down low. I don't know if they have the physicality advantage like we did against Detroit Mercy, but I think there's definitely something there, 6'10 and 6'11 versus 6'8 and 6'7. So I think we could really exploit that. Maybe get Durham in the post a little bit. Leschewski looked like he was posting up a bit too, so I think that could be huge if we can really take advantage of that matchup, and if those two guys can be big on the boards also. But heading into the leading scorer prediction, I'm going to go with Prentice Hub for this one. I don't really see a standout bad defender on OSU, so I'm going to go with Hub. I think OSU is going to have a tough time defending him. But it's also possible he comes out sluggish after playing 40 minutes on Sunday. Jake, who do you think your leading scorer is going to be for this one?
Yeah, I can see it being Leschewski. I mean, they don't really, have height. So I think that's something we could definitely exploit. I think he's going to continue what he's done in the season. Who I would love to see lead the team in scoring? Cormac Ryan. Go ahead and show us what you're made of, what the hype was about. That would be very good, in my opinion.
Agreed. I was almost going to pick Cormac for this one, but I think Hub's almost the safe pick at this point for leading scorer. I don't know if he was last night, but I know he was against MSU, so I think he's the safe pick there. But my prediction, I'm going to go Notre Dame by 4. I don't think OSU is going to be able to keep up with us after the teams they've played and a team they struggled with in UMass Lowell. So I think Notre Dame by 4. It's definitely going to be a challenge, though, with the way Ohio State beats you up down low physically. and all over. They're a physical team, drawing fouls. I think this could go very poorly if our guys get in foul trouble early and we have to lean on Sanders, Zona, and Morgan a lot. But I think Notre Dame by 4, assuming everything goes as planned. Jake, what's your prediction for this one?
I'm going to go with Ohio State by somewhat under 10 points. I think it will be Notre Dame will definitely give it a good go, but I mean, I'm at believe it when I see it point with Notre Dame beating a ranked team. I think they can compete with them. They can take it down to the wire. They did it so many times last year, but until they get that W, I mean, you can't really give them the benefit of the doubt. Sadly, I would say.
Mm-hmm. I think that's the first time we've disagreed on a score in a while, but I don't know. I think they find a way to get this one done. Ohio State's definitely tough, but I think if we're going to beat a ranked team, I think it's either Ohio State or Kentucky, to be honest. So this is the week. I think you have to go 1-1 this week, at least, maybe 2-0. But that's what I got for this one. If you got anything else, or if not, we can just end it off and go watch the game later tonight.
I think that's good.
All right. Talk to you guys later. Go Irish. Peace.